You're listening to the Hunt Suburbia podcast. I'm your host, Pat Guyette. Big bucks I've been dreaming often, every night till I'm in a coffin. Vermont woods to the burbs of Boston, I'm looking for a tree to get lost in. Crisp mornings, little dust in the snow. Quality time, just me and my bow. Fall evenings, I know just where to go for some quality times for me and my bow. It's just me and my bow. This week, I sit down with Dan Jaros, a New Hampshire-based hunter who had an incredible season last year. He killed 4 mature whitetails. He'll say that one maybe is only 2.5, but that was a 10-pointer. So, I mean, having a season like that in 1 year, 4 great bucks, it is something that we all dream about. So we sit down with him, and we brought Kevin Poulos back from the first week's episode. He doesn't live too far away, so he wanted to come up and join in on this one. A lot of great knowledge, per usual. We really hope you enjoy it, and thanks again for listening. Okay, we're live with Hunt Suburbia, and we've got first repeat guest, Kevin Poulos is back. He's going to help me on this one, little co-hosting job, and we are interviewing Dan Jaros, who's had, quite a season already, the start of the 2020 season. He's got a great story to tell about that, and we're going to talk a little bit about his dad's buck this year, which is also another monster, and get into even, this season aside, last season was an incredible season. He killed 4 mature bucks, so we're going to pick his brain on, how he did that. But let's start with, what's fresh on your brain? What happened this past weekend?
So this past weekend last year was a very crazy story that I'm sure we'll get into later, but this past weekend might have beaten that. So I'll do my best to somewhat abbreviate this. My buddy from college, roommate of mine, we had hunted together there. He came up for the weekend. We try to get together once or twice a year and hunt. So he came up. We went out Saturday morning. I put him in one of my spots that I'd had pretty good luck at before, and I went in blind basically into a new spot. It was up on top of I want to call it a mountain. It's not quite a mountain, but big hill. I'd scouted it with my dog in February. One of the goals I had this past year was to do more winter scouting. I didn't do nearly as much as I wanted to, but this was one of the areas that I did do that. So I marked up some spots on Onyx. I had a really good idea of where they were bedding, particularly some of the bucks in the area. So found an area that I kind of figured was a main travel corridor going in and out of there. There was a bunch of oaks up there, and it was right on the edge of bedding. So it seemed like a pretty good guess. I just went in the dark, got as close to that spot that I had picked out, found a tree, climbed up in it, was in there for maybe an hour or so. Real cold. We were fired up to get in there this weekend.
What a crazy cold weekend. Early.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, it's weird. I've been hunting up in New Hampshire, been living up there for 5 years now, and it's never been this cold opening week. And I'm sure you guys have seen on social media, it's unbelievable how many bucks have been shot this opening week.
Big bucks.
Yep, huge bucks. Saw that one 232 a couple days ago.
Triple drop tine one.
Yep, saw that. Unbelievable. But anyways, I get in there about an hour after daylight. I have some noise behind me. A doe ends up coming in. Wasn't planning on shooting a doe. I was actually filming too. Kevin, you had inspired me. We've had a few conversations about self-filming and everything. Actually, me and my brother-in-law have kind of followed along on all your videos and stuff, and we've looked up to that. And it's kind of one of my pushes this year is to get more of this on film. I didn't get any of those deer that I shot last year on film. I did get my first bow kill on film. It was a doe early in the year, but wanted to shoot a buck on film. So wasn't going to shoot the doe. As she's coming in, about 5 yards before she gets to me, I hear, and I'd never heard a snort wheeze in person before. You hear it in, shows all the time and everything like that. Never heard it, but without question, I knew what it was. It was weird because it's September. That's a rut thing. That's an aggressive, so I didn't
really know. The rut came early this year.
Yeah, it certainly seemed it. Yeah, wait till you hear the rest of this. So I hear that. So I figured there's a buck in the area. I don't know why. I don't really know what's going on. It's just very weird here in September. So she ends up walking off, meets up with another deer, caught a quick glimpse of that. About 5 minutes go by, and I hear footsteps coming from where I heard the snort wheeze. And sure enough, out steps this buck. And I'm like, all right, it's a buck. Let's see if it's a shooter. Comes a little bit closer. I'm like, yep, that's a shooter. And I'm filming. So, I was like, 3.5 or better, I'm going to try to shoot because I want to get a buck kill on film.
You don't know any of the bucks in this area, right? Or had you scouted out some of the bucks?
I don't run a whole lot of trail cameras. I do run some. Ironically, and I just started looking into this more today, I do believe that I passed on this deer last year as a 2-year-old. I think. I can't confirm that, but I'm pretty sure. So I see it's a shooter. He bends down to take a leak. I don't think he made a scrape. I draw back. And I'm at full draw because I think he's about to step out. I ranged him at 34 yards. I'm at full draw for about 1.5 minutes. He's just standing there tearing up a tree with his antlers. I'm like, all right, I'm not going to get a shot for a little bit. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to let down. And so I'm going to adjust my camera and, try to line myself up for the next opportunity here. As I go to let down my bow, I will probably die not knowing what happened next. But my bow just goes bang. And immediately I knew what happened. My bow basically just exploded in my hand. My arrow snapped in half, fell to the ground. My cable snapped, and it just came unstrung. I've never had anything like that happen before. Again, I've thought about it.
Did it fall apart in your hands and fall off your stand and everything? Like, when you say it exploded, it just like...
The string exploded.
Yard sale.
Basically, yeah. The limbs were fine. But yeah, the string just came off, and I looked down, and I'm holding my bow, and it's just it wasn't good. So the buck takes a couple bounds, stops. Like 5 minutes go by. Here he comes, walking straight towards me. This is everything I'm about to tell you is all on video. I'm gonna try to edit this all together at another time.
That's the fun part.
Yeah. So he gets like 20 yards away, turns, and just eventually walks off. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm gutted at this point because it's probably something I did. I highly doubt that my bow just failed. I don't see why that would happen. Either I pushed the broadhead up against a tree when I was leaning out because I was in the crotch between two trees. Maybe I torqued it. I don't know. I messed up big time. So he walks off. I text my buddy. I'm like, hey, I'm coming down. I'm going to go out to nearest trail and just start making phone calls, find a bow shop because my buddy's up for the weekend, and I don't have a bow. I can't go hunting. So as I'm packing my stuff up, put my camera in my bag, I hear noise behind me, and I look, and here comes a deer. And I'm like, all right, more deer. All right, cool.
Please don't be a buck at this point.
Exactly. I'm like, all right, this can't get much worse. And sure enough, it's an 8-pointer. He's coming straight at me. As he's coming at me, I'm like, I gotta get this on video. No one's gonna believe this is happening. So I pull out my phone, and all this video is on my phone. As I'm videoing him, I catch movement behind him. Here comes another 8-pointer.
Oh my god!
And I'm like, this is no one's
crazy.
gonna believe this.
And that's probably why you're hearing the snort wheezing.
Now it all makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep. So the two of them end up coming to the base of my tree. I literally have a video. I'm in my saddle. I have a video of them looking down at them through my platform, and they're just sniffing around. Have no idea, absolutely no idea I'm there. They end up walking off, and I'm just like, this is ridiculous. So we end up, my buddy had shot a doe, nice doe, dressed 126 pounds. He's all fired up. So we go to tag it, and we tagged it at a place that was kind of far away, but it was a bow shop. I go there, I tell him what happened, and he's like, you're probably out of luck, and it's probably going to be 2 weeks before you get your bow fixed. Yeah, I'm like, what do we do? Like, this 2 weeks
you don't have
doesn't
a backup
work.
bow, right?
No.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
He's digging through parts for like 10 minutes. He's like, I think today might be your lucky day. I'm like, well, it hasn't been so far. So he ended up having a yoke. So I ended up, the whole thing was about 2 hours of driving. Get my bow fixed and tell my buddy, I'm like, we are going to the same spot tomorrow.
Yeah.
I kind of figured that if there's 3 bucks together, this time of year with this cold weather, none of them spooked either.
Yeah.
That they're bachelored up they're on summer patterns, there's a decent chance that they're going to do this again, especially because now I really got it nailed down where they're bedding.
I was talking to Kevin about it that night that you told me your bow blew up, and he was like, I bet you he's going to, if he goes back there tomorrow, he's going to get another shot at him.
Really?
Yeah, it's this early in the season.
Yeah. You were more confident than I was.
Especially with 3.
Yeah. So the next morning, go back in there, get set up, ready to rock and roll. And I hear some noise coming right from where he did yesterday. And I'm like, no way. And sure enough, out steps a spike horn. So I'm like, all right, yeah, that's all that was. No more than 30 seconds later, I hear another one coming. And here he is. And so I get my camera on him. Comes out. Same thing he did the day before. As the two of them are coming over, I now hear something off to my right. And coming from the bedding area, that one starts coming in and meets up with the spike horn. And then I start hearing antlers clank. So I figured that it's now 2 bucks sparring. The one that I ended up shooting, he kind of like puffed up and like, was looking over there and then just lost interest pretty quick. He's probably like, I'm just going to do
It's
this
just
thing.
a spike horn.
Yeah. He ends up turning. I'm at full draw now. Again, for a while, I was at full draw for a little over a minute, and he starts coming in, hooks up a tree a little bit, and then he comes in a little bit further, and then just looks straight up at me. And I realize now that's exactly where the wind was blowing. He winded me, stomped his foot, stepped up. I'm at full draw, and a lot of people are going to see this video, so I do kind of want to talk about this shot. I didn't want to take that shot. It's not a good shot to take. It was pretty heavy quartering too. It was a 25-yard shot. It does look longer on film. Because he had me pegged, I knew it was that or nothing. I know my shooting abilities. I know my arrow setup very well. I shoot a very heavy arrow. I'm 540 grains, and I shoot a Sever broadhead. I'm not going to get too much into that, but it's an expandable good for penetration, and the way the head moves is that it won't deflect, so it's good for angled shots. Had a small window to shoot through, and I tried it. Ended up working. I did end up catching both lungs. I hit the front lung very well, just clipped the back lung. Went out, the deer took off, ran about 260 yards and piled up. I actually think I heard him go down, but I gave it 6 hours because I wasn't sure. Didn't feel great about it.
Too far back or
Yep, exactly.
just liver.
And that was it. So I ended up getting him. That was a wild one.
Just to create, I mean, to have it blow up in your hand the day before, I mean, you're at your wit's end. You've got $3 hanging around. I mean, to go from that low to the high the next day of getting them, I mean, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, you didn't have to suffer for very long. One day, not even.
I mean, looking back, the way it played out, it makes for a great story. But at the time, I was just like, this is miserable, One of the ones I shot last year was a pretty bad experience, and that just kept running through my head, and that was a mistake. I ended up getting that deer, but it was just a mistake that I had made, and
That's the one New Hampshire buck that didn't die in a driveway. I mentioned in one of the podcasts that one of your bucks last year died in someone's driveway. Is that right?
Yep. And if that buck didn't die in someone's driveway, I never would have found it. You want me to go through that story?
Let's go right into that
right.
one. I mean, talk about whatever deer. We'll start with that one, and then you've got 3 more mature bucks to talk about from last year.
Sure. So this was the first one I shot last year. This is a very targeted hunt. This was one of the first hunts. This is the first time. This is my biggest buck to date. Dress 205. This was the first real big buck I've killed that I was. I didn't have pictures of him or anything. I didn't know he existed, but I knew the area really well from scouting, and I knew that there was a big one in there. I do a lot of looking for tracks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I knew that there was a big deer in there in those regards. So it's a very targeted hunt. I had wanted to hunt this area for about a month prior to when I went in, but wind wasn't right. Time of year wasn't right. Wanted to wait till I love mid to late October. I think it's a really good time to kill deer if you know where they're bedding, which I kind of did in the situation.
So you don't believe in the October lull either?
Yes and no. I do think if if you're sitting in a particular area, I do think you're going to see less activity in October. But I think so much is changing that, like, if you're not mobile, you're going to miss out on some of that. That's some of the stuff I've learned from you, Kevin, just listening to your stuff too. But if you know where a buck is bedding, I think they start to get a little freaky. And if you catch it late October cold front, just killer. And I waited for that particular cold front and went in there. It was one of those things, just kayak waders, takes like 3 hours to get to where I was going. And I was still set up about an hour before shooting light. That was like a get up at 2:30 in the morning type of deal. But yeah, I had 2 bucks come in on me. I drew back on the first one, and as I was drawing the first one, I saw the second one coming that was a lot bigger. I happily would have shot the first one too.
Yeah, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
I end up ranging him at 42 yards. 40 yards is like my max. So that's pushing it for me. I feel confident. I shoot to 60, and I have no doubt I could kill a deer at 60, but it's just not a good shot to take. Too many variables when you're bow hunting. But I decided to take the shot just with everything that was going on. It was classic. Like, you got just a swamp, and it's cold, and there's steam coming up, and the sun's hitting it, and there's this big buck walking in. You can hear him crashing through stuff, and it is just like this.
What time of morning was that?
He was probably about a half hour after sunrise, so an hour after
right
shooting
away.
And I was just so fired up, and my rangefinder fogged up because I was breathing so heavy. And I end up, come to find out, I shot, and I see my arrow bury into the dirt. I shoot luminox, so I knew exactly where it went. Thought I missed him. Swore I missed him. I was just beside myself. I've worked so hard for an opportunity to deer like this.
And the patience to wait all that time to go in there. You could have hunted it. A lot of guys will just get in there, right?
Yeah, which I do think you should do in some situations, but in this very specific situation. But what ended up happening was I got down 3 hours later and found my arrow, and it was covered in blood. And I went from thinking I missed to seeing my arrow covered in blood, and it looked like good blood. Yeah, so I was fired up. But what had happened was I used my wrong pin. It was a 40-yard shot, and I used my 20-yard pin. Simple as that. So I ended up hitting him very, very low. And it just created a big mess. So I tracked him for a little while, had really good blood, knew it was lung blood too because there were bubbles in it. I ended up bouncing him out of his bed. This is probably like 4 hours after the shot. So I backed out. In New Hampshire, really wish Mass would do this, but New Hampshire, you can get tracking dog.
Yeah, I wish that too.
Never had. It's just an ethical thing.
You can't do that?
Sure.
No.
Nope.
It's a very ethical. I think some people overutilize that sometimes rather than just tracking a deer. But in this situation, I needed it. I ended up contacting a few different people. Finally got someone. It was Adam Evans, great guy, the hillbilly weatherman. I don't know if you guys have ever met him, but great dude. He met up with me out there. We tracked that buck for over a mile that night. Very cool experience watching a dog track a deer and everything. It's not what you'd think. They don't follow blood. I never knew that. When a deer is injured and it runs, it puts out a scent in its foot, and that's what that's what the dog follows. So we end up deciding mutually to call it off. We both thought the deer was going to live most likely. I mean, you never really know, but there was not much we could do at that point. We weren't on blood anymore. We hadn't been on blood for quite some time. So that was it. My wife had family coming up that night, and so it was a bad situation. So
Now, did he know that the dog was still on the deer at the time, or was he unsure of that as well?
yes and no. We were on the deer, but we didn't have blood, and the deer was moving. He was not. He gave us no indication that he was going to die.
No bedding and stopping like that. No.
And again, you thought you hit him really low, so maybe it was you thinking gut shot at that point.
Yeah, or just I shot a deer with a rifle very early on. It was a doe that I hit super low below the heart, and you can live like that. I shot another deer that had been hit there one time. So yeah, it's a shot if you just catch their belly, I was like, maybe I didn't have lung blood. But anyways, Sunday comes and goes. I'm completely beside myself. I had made that post about it, how gutted I was.
I remember that.
Monday comes and goes. I am at a parking lot. I was doing some errands Monday night, and Adam, the guy that helped me track him, calls me and he's like, "Hey, have you been on Facebook?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't." He's like, "You need to go on Facebook right now." So I log on, and he starts to tell me the story. He's like, "I think someone found your deer." What ended up happening was this deer unfortunately made it 24 hours, and that's something that I need to live with, and that's because of a mistake that I made. And I'd like to say that I'll never make that mistake again. And
It's part of hunting.
yeah, it is.
Unfortunately, it is.
Yeah.
If you hunt long enough, it's going to happen at least once.
Yeah.
Probably more than once.
Yeah.
I mean, I did that just target practicing. The first time I busted my bow out this year I was like, why is it shooting so low? I did the same exact thing. I messed up the pins on either side of my red pin there, and that's just target practicing.
Yeah.
So when you got a big buck in front of you, that's when mistakes can really pile up.
Yep. So yeah, anyways, what happened was this deer made it 24 hours, ended up dying Sunday morning in someone's driveway. They called the EPOs. EPOs came down, got the deer, and this is, they ended up putting it out on Facebook like, "Hey, we found a deer that was shot." I don't know if they were trying to find like information, if it was poached or something. A lot of people accused me of poaching that deer. It just internet stuff.
Sure. There's a ton of that. Jake talked about it last week.
Yeah. If you kill something big and, people are going to be jealous and just start saying shit.
There were a lot of people that knew exactly what happened to that deer. And I was like, I was the only one that really knew what happened. And I'm like, I mean, there were people that were like, "No, this was shot at this time from this road with a crossbow." And I'm like, it's just so weird, the thing that people are saying. But anyways, so when you track in New Hampshire, you have to call it into the state before you start your track. So we were very well documented with the state. So the tracker had called the state and was like, "Hey, we had a track right where this deer was found. Let's see if everything adds up." They game warden was awesome. I've had a number of run-ins with New Hampshire Fish and Game, and they have been very, very positive. This guy, wish I could remember his name, but he was awesome to deal with. Asked me a ton of questions. What, how far the shot was, what angle was it, what do you shoot for broadhead, your arrow, everything. Fortunately, because the deer had died and then they found it immediately, they brought it to a local butcher and put it in a cooler. I got to meet him there. Yeah, all the meat was fine. Thank God, I mean, that's why we hunt. If I can shoot a deer and get the antlers and no meat, it means absolutely nothing to me. But we ended up going up. Everything added up, and I got my deer after 3 days.
It's crazy. So, see, now that you're filming, when they start asking those questions, you just whip out the video. Here it is right here.
It's funny you say that, and that's a big part of the reason why I wanted to film more this year too, was that even on this one, like especially that marginal shot that I took this weekend, I went back and looked at the film, put it on the TV when we went back.
It's crazy helpful.
It is unbelievably helpful. I knew exactly where I hit that deer. I knew what angle he was. I knew where he was standing. I mean...
And you see them do that all the time on TV when they have great footage. And I remember the first deer that I ever shot on video was with a mount on the bow, and it shakes when you shoot. And I thought I had made a perfect shot, and I remember going back to my dad's, and we must have watched it 1,000 times. And I remember my dad giving me all kinds of crap about... Why is it shaking? Right when you shoot, it shakes. And trying to look at it to see if where it hit. Was it high? It's definitely helpful. That's for sure. You think you hit it here, and it's.
Yeah, it's funny how many times you just have different scenarios, and you're like, oh, this is definitely what happened. I remember a good friend of mine shot his first deer, and I went and helped him track it, and he smoked the thing, but he's like, it was standing right here when I shot. And I'm like, couldn't find anything. And we go like 20 yards away and just find a pile of blood and hair. And I'm like, you sure he wasn't here? He's like, oh, maybe he was. And then I'm like, all right, where'd he run to? And he's like, he went right between those two trees. Like, unless you shot 2 deer, there's a pile of blood going this way. So it's just funny how much, it happens after you shoot.
So hard. I have 2 friends, and neither of them shot a deer yet, and they just started hunting. And I know I'm going to be the one tracking it. And I've been saying, I said it yesterday, and I keep telling them, listen, as we get close to the season, I'm going to keep repeating this. All I want you to do is try and mark where you last see the deer. Because I know they're not going to remember anything else. But just try and mark it so we don't, because I know their first time, they're going to be, I don't know, he was over there, I don't know where he was.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, talk about highs and lows, man. Your last 2 seasons, like 2 of those experiences are just emotional swings.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah. And then, so what else did you get that year? I mean, last year. So that was buck number 1.
Yep, that one kicked it off. I mean, that was it. If that was the only one I shot last year, I would have been absolutely thrilled.
You would have been happy for last year. You would have been happy for a lifetime with that buck.
Yeah.
You guys got to see this buck. We'll post it up on Instagram. It's on Dan's Instagram. Right.
Yep. Dressed 205 was my first one, over 200 pounds. Got
Huge
my New
mass.
Hampshire buck patch, which everyone in New Hampshire tries to go for. So, very fortunate for that. So, after that, I went to Maine in November. I ended up shooting a 10-pointer up there with the rifle out of my saddle opening day. That was a situation where this is why I absolutely love saddle hunting, and I don't know that I'll hunt out of a tree stand again for these reasons. So that first one that we just talked about, that was from a saddle. That was in a tree that I couldn't have gotten in otherwise. I mean, just the 3 hours getting in there, not having a tree stand or anything like that, and crawling through a swamp on your hands and knees and everything. It's just the versatility of a saddle and wild edge steps and everything.
Kev, you're trying a saddle this year.
Oh, yeah, I have some questions for him. Don't worry.
That's good. So this one, I was gun hunting with a rifle. I decided I was going to go out early afternoon and just still hunt. It was just about to start snowing. Actually, it had started snowing. I was just going to still hunt through an area that I kind of knew, but I wanted to push it a little bit further. And once I got to an area that just felt really good without pushing it too far, I was going to set up there. That's exactly what I did. I was pretty close to where figured they might be bedding, but I wasn't positive. And I had doe bedding behind me, and the wind was blowing kind of in there. But my wind was also good, so it was like good for the buck and good for me. Mm-hmm. He ended up coming out right before dark and kind of looked at him a few times, and I wasn't sure if I should shoot. It was the first day of the trip. I was there for a week, and I counted 10 points, and it was snowing pretty hard. So here's a 10-pointer in the snow, and I decided to shoot. That one I honestly do believe is a 2.5-year-old. So I don't think that was a very mature deer. A nice rack on him for sure.
Yeah.
But he only dressed 150 pounds. So, but nonetheless, I'm pumped. You know, big woods Maine deer. I'm very, very happy about that. So I ended up leaving camp early. Headed
was
home.
that morning? I'm sorry. Did you say morning?
That was in the afternoon.
Afternoon. Okay.
Yep, that was right
Still
before
hunted
dark.
all morning and set up for the afternoon.
Yep, exactly. Which I've always hunted out of a climber before then, and I'm not going out for several hours, still hunt with a climber on my back.
Yeah,
so,
that's what's really cool about a saddle.
Yeah. Yep. A lot of versatility more than anything. So that was that one. I then came home early, gave it like a day, hung out with my wife, and I was like, well, I am on vacation still, so I'm going hunting. And I had a spot down in Massachusetts. It's an area I've hunted many, many years, and it's a newer spot in an area that I had found that I knew was doe bedding, and it was weird. I don't know if you remember the second week in November, we got a southwest wind, or let me think. It was a southwest wind, and it was weird because it was cold. It was super cold, and then it switched to warm, and normally when that happens, it's a southerly wind. This was a southwest wind, but it's still going to be a cold morning, so I'm like, it's probably going to be a good rut morning. But with the wind doing what it's doing, in this particular spot, I was really cutting the wind. Like, I knew 2 trails that came out to this doe bedding area, and my wind was blowing between the 2. So it's like, this might work, it might be disastrous. And sure enough, he came in. I was just sitting there. I was probably there for like 2 hours, morning hunt. That was another get up at 3 a.m., drive an hour and a half down to Mass, crawl through a swamp, get up in a tree. He came in. I was like, buck, nice buck, big buck. I was like, I am shooting. And another saddle kill. So one of the advantages about a saddle is that you sit behind the tree and you're looking at the tree. You can use the tree as cover. That might seem weird in that you think that you don't want to be staring at a tree, but it's not as weird as you'd think. The nature of this tree, I was only about 14 feet off the ground, and there was not a single branch. I had zero cover. I had to hide behind the tree. He came in. I ended up shooting him at like 12 yards. I hid behind the tree, drew back behind the tree, and then stopped him, and then just drilled him and watched him go down. That was that. I was like, this is ridiculous.
How many days was that after the main deer?
That was 2 or 3 days after the main deer.
You still got some vacation time after
I did, yeah.
So at no point your wife's saying, you're married, right? Your wife's not saying, okay, so you got your deer. Okay, so now you're going to be home.
I'm obviously partial. I have the best wife in the world. She's very understanding, and I've messed up a lot in previous relationships, but I was very upfront with her, and I'm like, our first couple of dates, I'm like, I hunt. And she's like, okay. And I'm like, no.
Yeah. Same thing with my wife.
I don't think you're going to fully understand this for a while.
No. My wife didn't know really anything about hunting at all. And I tried to say, no, it's like all year long. I don't.
The same with mine. I was like, it's at least 5 weekends in a row. It's what I always did in Vermont. The 3 rifle weekends, 2 muzzle loading weekends. She even put it in her vows that she was, that was going to be a part of it. That we're going to be A-okay every year.
Wow, nice.
But remember, you have a baby now.
Yeah. So I spent the rest of that week with her just to that was the right thing to do at that point.
Oh yeah. And then you got one more awesome buck from last year.
Yeah, so season went through. I tried to get some of my other friends into deer. I really like hunting with other people and trying to get them into deer. It's rewarding.
Yeah, sure is.
Yeah, even if it's just like a doe or someone trying to shoot a spike horn, like it is so cool seeing someone go through that. So I spent some time doing that. This next one was New Hampshire deer. This was my muzzleloader, and shout out to Big Woods Bucks. It was a Woodman Arms muzzleloader, just the best muzzleloader ever made. I went out. This was a very quick hunt. I ended up bagging out of work like an hour early. I knew I had about an hour and a half before dark. It was right after a huge snowstorm. We had gotten about 1.5 feet of snow. It was in December, which is pretty rare for that time of year. And this is an area fairly close to where I live. I knew that there were deer in there. I'd gotten some pictures of deer in there. And I know deer love on a heavy snow, especially the first heavy snow. They're just, it hits them kind of weird. They get funky and they're like, do we go into winter? And they just kind of hunker down. So I knew there was a spot where there were a bunch of hemlocks and some food. And I was like, I'm just going to go in there and just still hunt through. And honestly, I hadn't been hunting for more than 15 minutes. And I come around through the hemlocks, just really creeping slow, and I see a deer. So I stop, take a knee, I'm watching, and he puts his head up, and I'm like, no way. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. And I even debated shooting, too, because I'm like, I'd already shot 4 deer at this point. I shot that doe earlier on, and I'm like, how do I not shoot this deer right now? And then I remembered I had a conversation with my buddy the week prior. This is a great New Hampshire barter right here. He had said, I will do a bunch of work for you. Work on your snowmobile. My snowmobile needed a bunch of work. He's like, I'll do all the work for your snowmobile for free if you give me a deer. And I was like, sign me up for that deal. So I was like, then it hit me. I'm like, I owe him a deer. I was like, oh, nice. So I waited. He gave me, eventually ended up giving me a good shot. He had no idea I was there. Wind was good. Ended up shooting him. He did not go very far. And then, had a long drag out through 1.5 feet of snow. That was tough. But my brother-in-law came and helped me out with that one. So, and that was it. Yeah.
Snow
that
was great.
It. He just told one season. It sounds like some guys have just talked about the last 10 years they've hunted.
Yeah, it was weird. They were very targeted hunts. Like I went in, weather-based and everything like that. But I feel like no matter who you are, what you do, there is a huge element of luck. That deer went left instead of right. He was there instead of here. I mean, say what you will, but there's a lot of luck involved with all of that, And it was very lucky, very fortunate to even get the opportunity to go out and chase all these deer and everything. So, yeah, it was a lucky year for sure.
So you're up for a bad year. Apparently not this year. But it's coming.
Well, the pressure was on going into this year, that's for sure. I didn't.
Well, that pressure's off.
Yeah.
Okay, before we get into this week's raffle and draw a winner, I would just like to remind everybody to enter into the raffles every week. Just interact with our social media pages at Hunt Suburbia. Throw a subscribe on YouTube. You'll have to search for us, Hunt Suburbia Podcast on YouTube. Throw a subscribe, leave likes and comments. Every time you do that, you're going to be entered into a raffle. So the more you interact, the better chances you are of winning. And one thing that we're going to add a little bit more weight to is if you leave a review for us and 5-star rating. If you're listening on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, you can throw a 5-star review in there, and writing out a review and just giving us your honest opinion on the podcast helps us in the podcast ratings. It'll get us up onto the Wilderness Podcast page. So when people are looking for new content, new podcasts, we'll be there front and center. And this is ultimately going to help us attract new hunters into the landscape and, protect hunting for the future generations and make sure we still have these opportunities that we have today. I mean, I would greatly appreciate it. The reviews are the most heavily weighted. Thanks again for listening, and we will draw the winner right now. The winner this week is Danny Mui. Danny, I hope I pronounced your last name right, but congratulations on winning. Please shoot us an email at huntsuburbia@gmail.com, and we will get you over the Onyx subscription. And hey, if anybody wants to just shoot an email, ask a question, or you want to give us a review that way through the email. If you want to ask us a question that we can answer in future podcasts, we'll start doing that too. We just want to hear from you, and thanks again, everybody, for listening and sharing, and happy hunting this year. I hope everybody gets a deer.
Was it your first year hunting a saddle last year?
No, I had hunted a little bit the year before, kind of got acclimated with it.
And what'd you use before that, a climber?
Yeah, Summit Climber. I have done hundreds and hundreds of hunts out of a climber. Very comfortable with it. So the one good thing, anyone that's getting into saddle hunting, the biggest thing I can tell you is commit to it. It is going to be a learning curve. This thing they say about getting in saddle shape, it's very true. You need to commit to it. The blessing I had last year is that I went to North Dakota September 1st for like 8 days with my buddy. And we're flying out there, so all I had was a saddle with me, and it forced me to, for 8 days straight, morning and afternoon, use my saddle. I became very comfortable with it. So going into the season, I felt really good about it. But a lot of people try out the saddle, and they're like, oh, I'm going to use my stand today because it's easier. Just commit to it. Do it and deal with the crap and the sweating and the being frustrated and everything, because it is worth it once you finally get the hang of it.
I mean, I think my draw to getting the saddle, and I almost did it last year, is the amount of times there'd be a spot that I want to run into and get into and hunt, but I don't want to bring a stand in. There's probably a good chance, I haven't scouted the area, there's a good chance that I'm going to have to pull this tree stand out. I don't have time to do that. I'd love to just be able to go, boom, get up and get down. And I had a mobile setup that I used for a few years that was pretty light, like a crazy old light stand with sticks. But it's not the same as the saddle as far as not even so much weight, but just the bulk and being able to just slip in and out. And I haven't hunted out of it yet, but I've been doing all kinds of practice with it, just maneuvering through the woods, and so far I love it. I haven't hunted yet, but
yeah, I think a lot of people you read online and stuff, they're like, oh, this doesn't actually save you that much weight. The biggest piece to this is your climbing method. I feel like it can get overlooked. Like a saddle itself, and I have a platform, that weighs nothing compared to a tree stand. But your climbing method can really make or break it. And like you said about bulk, I don't really care about the weight. I mean, if I'm carrying an extra 5 pounds, whatever, it's not a big deal. But the bulk, being able to get on my hands and knees, crawl through brush without sticks getting caught up or anything like that. That's why I use the wild edge steps. They're not the easiest. It's a bit of a learning curve. But man, I mean, my entire setup, I can get up to 20 feet high in the air with 4 wild edge steps, an aider, my platform, and my saddle. And it all fits in my backpack, and it weighs like 13 pounds together. Something like that. That's including all my gear and everything too. So
So let me ask you a question as far as saddle hunting goes. So the deer you shot this past weekend, you were in the saddle, you said, right?
Yep.
And you were filming.
That's correct.
How did you, so the first time you were using a camera arm, correct?
No, so the doe I shot on film last year was from a saddle, and that was with a camera as well.
So how'd you feel that learning curve was? Because I know there's so many guys that are been getting into filming and want to get into filming, and now you're combining the saddle with it. And
Yeah, so maybe I'm not the best person to ask because I hadn't filmed a ton before then, but my buddy Matt had been filming. I do a lot of hunting with him. He had got me into filming just because we would go out to New York and we get into so many crazy adventures, and just the stuff we got on film over the years was so cool. And we come back to camp, we watch it, and have a few beers, and it's just so cool. And got me fired up to do it. So I've spent quite a decent amount of time filming from fixed tree stands and also a climber. But then when I switched to saddle hunting, it was all so new. I'm like, I might as well film because I'm gonna have to learn this anyways. Yeah. I personally think filming from a saddle is a lot easier.
That's good to hear.
Because it's on the tree. Your knees are right up against the tree. You put it right above your knees. It just really doesn't get in the way. Plus, you can shoot 360 degrees very easily from a saddle, and you can maneuver the camera in a way that you can shoot 360 degrees, and you can really sneak it out. So, like if you're sitting in a stand with your back against the tree, your arm's on one side of you. So you're going to have to move that. You can't really like put it behind you, whereas when the arm's in front of you, you can move it on either side. I mean, you guys listening to this obviously can't see this, but you can move it to either side of you between the tree.
Sure,
so
yeah.
I find it easier than a fixed stand. I mean, from someone that's never shot a deer on film, I got 2 of them on film, fairly easy. There's obviously a lot that can go wrong too, but yeah, I didn't think it was as much of a learning curve as I thought it was going to be.
That's good to hear. Now, I think it was you that I was talking to one time about the Lone Wolf pocket arm. I'm not sure.
Yes.
Do you have that?
I do have that.
Because I have it on order and I'm still waiting for it. So you say that's a win. You like?
I really like it. It comes with 3 pieces. I took the center piece out. I just wanted the 2 pieces.
Sure. Yeah, I've read guys doing that. Yeah.
Yep. I really like it because there's nothing on the market, from my understanding, that is even close to being that light and small.
And there's no mount.
Yeah, it's so quick. So I had a different arm before this. You literally just put it against the tree, put the strap around, and pull it. There's nothing more to it. It is way quicker than anything else I've used. Part of the reason I didn't film a lot of the hunts last year was because it was just, after you get into a spot and you've been going for an hour, 2 hours to get into a spot, it's just another thing you got to do. And I'm like, I just want to sit in a tree.
Did you have the stuff with you? Last year, and you just
no. There were times where I hunted and I'd bring it with me, and I'm just like, I don't want to deal with setting this up.
What do you guys use for cameras? Talking about arms, but what do you use for the actual camera?
I've been using the same Sony Handycam that I've had for a while, and the main reason I haven't got rid of it yet is I don't need to use a boom mic or anything on it. The mic on this has a mic extension built into it. Capability, and the mic on it's unbelievable. I'm waiting for any day this year for it to break, but I'm sticking with that one. It wasn't expensive either at the time. I wasn't looking to do anything fantastic, but the mic on this one is incredible.
I use a Canon Vixia, which is basically the same thing, just Canon's version. Cheap camera. I mean, I want to say it was like $350 compared to what some people spend over $1,000 and everything. I'm taking videos to show my family and friends. That's it. That's my only desire. It takes phenomenal video. I mean, even if the video wasn't that good, I'd still do it. And yeah, the mic on it is really good. The stuff it picked up this weekend, I was very surprised with. But yeah, I'm very happy with that. You don't need to spend much. Just if you're gonna get into filming, just do it cheap. See if you like it. You might not like it, and why waste all that money? Yeah.
I mean, even with the Tacticams they have now, the newer ones that you can just mount to your bow that do have some zoom on them. I mean, I would recommend people, looking into those, because it is a challenge moving the arm around.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
You can get into panic mode with that, and It's only cost me a deer one time, and it was a doe. I was just going to
ask you that.
So only one time, and it was a doe late season. I had like probably, I think it was 13 does around me, and probably 8 or 9 of them within 15, 20 yards. And most of them were already watching me, but, you know, I hit the camera. And
let me ask you this. Would you push the camera out of the way if you had a big one coming in?
So I think I was telling Pat that one of the ones, and I think it's on my YouTube page, pretty sure it is, that wide one that I was showing you that shot by my house. And this is another thing that I like about the camera from Lone Wolf, is it has the level on it as well. And I had the camera and it apparently wasn't level. And when the deer, when I grunted this buck back in, and he was coming at me right at twilight, and I kept trying to swing the arm around, and it wasn't level, so it was swinging away from me. And I pushed it out of the way and just waited and waited. And so all you see is like my hip or something the whole time. You can hear him walking in and all that. And like I've told other people before, like if you get the shot on, that's great, but no one's paying you. So as long as you can just get the excitement, and you know, especially the excitement afterwards. And to me, like I love watching that back, especially other people, like kind of that low budget stuff.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it would be annoying to have a cameraman with you, and you always hear it like, do you have it on? Is it in the frame? Like,
Well, I'm gonna tell you, it's bad luck, because anytime I've filmed for someone, we never see any deer.
I've always wanted to do that. My buddy Matt that I was talking about, we had filmed, he had shot a bear in New York, and it was just this crazy experience. I won't get into the whole thing now, but I ended up taking his camera and filming him as we were tracking it. We tracked it for like 2 miles, came up on it when it was still alive, and we were with our muzzle loaders. We shot it twice, and then the thing got up and started coming, and we had to start running the other way.
Yeah.
It was wild, but we got it all on film.
That's
and it
crazy.
was so cool, and it was just real, you know. And it's when you're not doing the hunting show thing and doing it for yourself, you get all those real moments, and you don't have to edit that stuff out. And that Seabuck show, obviously you guys know about that.
Yep.
What a cool show that is. That is real.
Great show.
From the first episode,
Loved
where
it.
I love how emotional they get, and how they showed that they had to shoot the deer a couple of times, because that is what hunting is like, and we need more of that. The fact that it's in the Northeast is a bonus, but man, I just love how real that was.
Yeah,
It's
just like the
very
hunting
cool.
public, those guys. It's
It's
so real. Yep, I saw
yeah.
that when you came in. They just, I mean, I think they probably have the best.
Oh, they're putting out so much content.
Yeah. They then just the whole thing. You talk about them for like I don't know how many hours, but
And like you said, like it's when you're taking somebody else along and you're sharing a moment, whether it's they kill a doe or a spike horn or something huge, you share in that moment. It's like it feels just as good. People might not believe it. It feels just as good as when you get a deer.
Oh,
Is
absolutely.
when you're so happy for somebody that you're with that got a deer.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's the same thing with fishing. Like
yeah.
you're just so happy. You just want to see deer.
not
and
everyone's
see-
like that though.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
you're absolutely true. Like, you know, I always feel that way. Like, you know, I can't. If I hear anybody, even if it's somebody I haven't even known that well, I can't wait. I'm like, call me. Let's go get this thing. You know, it's like, it's really exciting when you see people get.
But especially if you're sitting there, like, if I
that's-
tag out, if I'm lucky enough ever somewhere to be tagging out and then take somebody else out and try to get them a deer and film it, I mean, I can't imagine that feeling.
Yeah.
Like seeing somebody's first deer, you know?
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm going to do that with my buddy Evan. He is my age, so 33. He's lived in Vermont since college. We met in college. We're good fishing buddies. And I've always just knew he would fall in love with hunting, but he's just never done it, never taken the course and taken the class or bought a gun. Vermont, it's a lot of rifle hunting. And this year he finally took the course. You know, during COVID, he had all this time. He took the course online, and I'm taking him out. You know, he gets to hunt novice weekend, which is essentially youth weekend for adults. It's a new rule in Vermont, so I just can't wait to get him a deer. Hopefully,
I think this year there's going to be a lot of new hunters. People, I should say, people trying it out for the first time. I mean, if you look
because
at
of COVID,
because
right?
of COVID, yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot more people turkey hunting this year than I've ever seen before. That's for sure.
People are itching to get out of their houses.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even from just the short few weeks that we've had this podcast going, there's a lot of people reaching out that are new.
Cool.
And this is going to be their first year, and they're listening along, you know, to guys like you that are really good at hunting, and guys like Kevin really good at hunting.
I think what you see a lot too, and I was telling you, I think the other day, that I have a girl that works for me that is moving out to Idaho, and right away started asking me about she wants to get into hunting and
Right.
what do I do? And there's a lot of people that I come across that don't have anybody to take them or
Yeah.
tell them what to do or show them their dad, their parents, or family, whatever, didn't, do that growing up. And that's tough. It's too bad there isn't like a group out there. I've always said that, like in Mass or anywhere, that you can actually have someone mentor you and take you out. And I know they do it for kids. I've done it for kids through one of the gun clubs for turkey hunting and stuff, but deer hunting, it'd be nice if they did that for.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what, these podcasts and stuff, it's like a virtual mentor. They get to listen in and learn from the best,
Yeah. I feel like if you ever have someone show a little bit of interest, I know it kind of be tough at times because, like the way we hunt, like, you're getting out there and you put so much planning in and you're kind of by yourself and you don't really want to drag someone along because they're going to make noise and they're going to mess up and they're probably going to ruin your hunt. But, just set some time aside to take those people out and just show them what it's all about. I think that can go so far. I've gotten a couple people, my friends, into hunting, and you might be surprised how rewarding that is. You maybe screw up a hunt or two for yourself. Don't bring them to your best spots. Bring them to a spot where you're going to see deer, and just let them get the excitement. It is going to be super rewarding for you. I know I've loved it, so it's good to take those.
Kevin's right in the middle of doing that with his son, right? Like I just helped him move a stand.
That's he helped me the other day. That's my goal is to get him to see some. He hasn't even seen a deer yet.
Oh yeah.
When we've hunted, and I was telling him that I took him turkey hunting. I think it was last year. And it was the first time I had ever gone. I think we talked about it on the last podcast, actually. And he called in 2 turkeys.
Whoa.
After I was packing everything up to leave. And he wanted to use the call by himself. And after like 3 hours, he called. 2 toms came in. And, of course, I was bow hunting, filmed the whole thing, and I messed the shot up. And the whole time I'm telling him not to move, not to move, not to move, not to move. And I don't know what 20 minutes later, I don't know how long it was. I'm like, he's like, can I talk now? And I said, yeah. He goes, Daddy, that was the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my life. I was like, oh. So that's definitely, you just touched on it. And I think I said it before, is if you're going to take somebody out, try and take them where they're going to see something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people will definitely lose interest could lose interest quick.
Especially with kids too. My dad, we were talking about where we hunt. My dad used to take me out as a kid. I must have ruined so many hunts for him. I used to get so excited. I was hooked from when I was young. I had this wool glove, and when there would be a deer coming in, he ended up telling me later on, he's like, most of the time he was out there was deer coming. It was just squirrels. Like, I heard noise. I just told you it was a deer. I would get so excited. I would lose it. Like, I would shake.
I do the same thing with my son.
Hunting, and I used to put my wool glove in my mouth and bite down on it, just because to like keep myself from making it so. Oh man, it gets so fired up as a kid.
That's so cool. True. And I remember my dad started taking me out, I think, when I was 9. In Vermont, you can hunt when you're 9. I had my license, and I could shoot in a .32 special, and so I'd be sitting with him, and we saw tons of deer. That was late 90s. There was kind of some years in the early 2000s we weren't seeing very many deer, but I remember seeing 13, 14, 15 deer in a sit with my dad, and yeah, that part really hooks you. If I was going out not seeing anything, year after year, I can see how you can give up on it,
Yeah.
A buddy of mine from college that I brought to my deer camp, I think he hunted 7 years at our camp and maybe saw 2 deer. And
it's tough.
Sounds like my style.
Yeah, it does, right?
Same exact thing.
And like camp is about camaraderie in camp. Like that part is great. It's a bunch of good guys, great stories at night. The food around the campfire, all that good stuff. So he was there for that, and he loved that part. But he just didn't see any deer, and he quit. And I think I told Kevin the first podcast. He ended up going to New York, the Finger Lakes region, and there's just littered with deer and big bucks over there. And so he hunts over there on my buddy's vineyard.
Oh,
and
cool.
Now he's spoiled. He's right into it. He loves it, but now he's like almost too spoiled. Like he didn't have to work that hard for his deer, so we always give him shit about that.
That's cool.
He's gonna make a return though to deer camp, he says.
Cool.
Dan, so like the deer last weekend. you can see the video. Somehow you've already got like 2,500 views on that thing. I don't know.
Yeah, that's weird.
Where
You told me that
promoted
last night. I didn't promote. I put it on Boston Bowhunter and the New Hampshire page. Yeah, I don't know what that's all about.
I think it's
weird.
Northeastern people are they're like Northeastern hunters are really starved for Northeastern content.
There's not much content. I mean, you go and Google like New Hampshire deer kills or something like that. There's like nothing out there. I started. I've looked up to Brett Joy and like Jake Bennett and John Petrick, all those guys for years, because like we Google stuff and like their videos would pop up and I'm like, oh, a New Hampshire hunt, like cool. And that's like
that's how I found Kevin's videos, because I moved here. I'm like, I gotta start learning like Massachusetts hunting. And I've watched every single one of Kevin's videos, and like you said, you watched all his, because there really isn't many. There are not many people putting out content.
No, there's not. Anytime you come across it, it's awesome. Johnny Brown's another guy that has put out some cool videos in New Hampshire, but man, outside of that, like no one's doing it. So maybe that's what it is. I have no idea.
Yeah, but so that deer, so you guys can see the video, and we'll link to it on Instagram. And the wind, you said he winded you, right?
Yes.
What do you do for scent control? How serious are you with your scent control? And do you think there was anything you could have done, even if you had, like, you know, some people use ozonics or whatever, in that moment where he wouldn't have winded you?
I don't know. So I do all the things, all the gimmicky things. It's funny. I ran out of like scent-free soaps. I had to go to Bass Pro the other day and buy some. And the lady at the counter was like, "Does this work?" And I'm like, "Probably not."
It's not gonna hurt. That's what I always say.
No, it doesn't. And I mean, if I have to wash my clothes and shower anyways, I might as well buy scent-free stuff. But I am very careful about it. You'll never beat a deer's nose. I firmly believe that deer will still smell you, but I do think that if you're hardcore about scent control, they might think you're 200 yards away instead of 50 yards away. And every little edge you can give yourself, I think you need to. But that being said, every single setup I'll do, I just make believe that I just stink. You have to make sure. You just have to plan for that, and I just assume that the deer can smell me. So, and if
good advice.
Scent control gives you an edge, then that's just a bonus at that point. But the other thing that I do want to say, and this changed everything for me. It was like 5 years ago when it was the first deer. It was only 2.5-year-old. It was the first deer I shot that like I really went in with a specific plan and got him. And that's when I started not hunting the wind that was good for me, but hunting the wind that was good for a deer. And I had sat a couple times in one area, and I knew there was a buck in the area. It had the area all torn up, and the wind was always good for me. And I'm like, why is he not coming out? Like, I could see his tracks. And then it just like dawned on me, like, someone was like, the buck's always going in the wind or crosswind, which is true and not true. But like, yeah, this was the rut in... I ended up going in 100 yards further on a particular wind where the buck was going to crosswind, but it was also good for me. I knew where there were doe bedding, and it ended up working out. And that was like a light bulb that went off. You have to use a wind that the buck is going to use. That you need to let him think that he has the advantage.
So explain that a little bit more, if you can. Like what's a wind that's good for the buck?
That one I shot in Mass. Last year, the 187 one there. That was the reason I went into that.
The little
spot.
guy.
Yeah. The reason I went into that spot on that day again was because of that southwest wind. So a southwest wind is blowing into the northeast, right?
Yep.
So there was a trail coming from the east and coming from the north, and I was right where those two trails meet. So my wind is blowing between. So all right, so I'll lay it out like this.
Yep.
Two trails right there, wind's blowing like that, right between the two deer trails. So that buck is not coming dead straight into the wind, but he's coming in. Yeah, he's quartering into the wind. So he thinks that he can smell everything, especially that doe bedding area that I was in. However, my wind is right off of him. Very little margin for error. Yep. But I think you have to do that. You have to really ride that line. You're going to mess up. The wind will swirl. You're going to get busted, but you'll get opportunities like that. So that's what I think is important.
And you hear sometimes that, and I know I've seen it before too, but the bucks will walk with the wind at their back. So then how do you...
That's think that's a big tracking thing. I think they do that more when
in
I'm
the
not
mountains and stuff.
Yeah, I'm not as big into tracking. I've done it a bit. That's one of my goals this year is I want to shoot one in the snow tracking, like a big one. And I'm going to put a big effort into that. I feel like a lot of those guys bring that up. And I think it's because when a buck knows that there's something behind him, then he wants to keep that smell behind him, so he wants to keep tabs on it. As far as them just walking normally with the wind to their back, I haven't seen that a whole lot. Not to say they don't do that, but I mean, a buck will not always walk into the wind. He would do a full lap around the world if that was the case, you know?
Right.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, I'm probably not the best person to ask about that one.
No,
I know when
great.
we used to in Vermont, a lot of times, sometimes we'd come across deer that they'd bed up on that knoll, and the whole time getting up there, that wind was at the back, and then obviously they're looking down with the wind in the back. But you see that. I think they do everything. I think the big thing you touched on, the first time I ever heard that was on I don't know if you ever watched White Knuckle Productions, Todd Prince. I don't know if you
Haven't seen it.
they have, if you want to check them out, they have a lot of stuff. But there was a guy on there, Todd. He actually passed away a few years ago, ATV accident, I guess. But he was a big guy on their channel, and he talked about hunting the deer's wind, and a big thing was those bedding areas with the quartering wind, so that they can cut through and just catch the wind and just keep going, and they don't even have to go through the bedding area. And that was the big thing, is you want not what's good for you, but what the deer is going to use. And
Yep.
it's the first time I had ever heard that.
It's interesting what you said
Makes
there.
sense.
I think deer, especially bigger deer, are very efficient. I mean, they're survivalists in every way. And I think, like you said,
They're not going to go out of their way, though.
yeah, why cruise through a whole bedding area if you can just walk one edge and you can smell everything that's in there and then move on to the next one? You know, I've noticed that they try to conserve as much energy as they possibly can.
Especially once you get a deer that's not from the area.
Yeah.
You know, later in November, and he's cruising through. He's just waiting. He's going to cruise right through and hopefully pick up a scent. If he doesn't, he just keeps going.
And like you said, they're going to choose the path of least resistance, right? So that's why if you're going to do e-scouting, like look at topo maps and look at features, right? Do you do that, a lot of that when you're scouting a new spot?
That's so much of what I do. I've spent countless hours. Probably not the best thing to do. Nothing beats boots on ground. You can look
Right.
at a map for hours, and then you go in there and you're like, whoa, nothing is like what
And how many times have you looked at a map without boots on the ground and then gone there and you're like, oh shit, there's a stand right there, because
Every time.
single time.
it's pretty easy to identify like a saddle on a topo map, right?
Yeah.
I think my friend said that the other day, didn't he? And I said to him, if I had $1 for every time I said, oh, this is a great looking spot, and then I look up and there it is.
Yep.
Yeah, every time.
Yeah, my wife, she'll just be like, why are you looking at maps all the time? She doesn't get it, you know? I'll be on my phone just looking at maps, zooming in, zooming out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's fun. I love it. It's a good starting point. So I like to learn an area and know where I want to go. But then you got to get in there. It's like I'll like break down a piece. Like look at it on a map, decide where I want to go, then go in there and just walk it quick. Not look for sign, because if you're staring at the ground so much that like I feel like a lot of times you should step back and just get a feel for the area. Like okay, there's a bluff up there, or
Yep.
you know there's a really good spot for buck to bed that you're not going to see that on top of map necessarily. So I think it's good to just walk the area, figure out the lay of the land, and then figure out how the deer are using it and break it down that way. Because if you're just looking for deer sign, you might not think about how the deer are going to use that area. Just they're here at a particular time, you know?
Yeah, I find myself overthinking a lot when I'm boots on the ground scouting. I'm just like, and we were talking about it the other day, moving your stand. It's like, how many times do you just like, I don't know about that tree. I'm like, I like it, but then like picking the tree when you're putting a stand up, you can so overthink it.
That is the story of my life.
Yeah.
And you touched on it earlier. You know, a lot of guys that hunt, obviously, that especially all year long, that the best time to scout is as soon as the season's over.
Yeah.
And it's probably just a good point for new hunters that just point that out, because your season's not over. That's the best time to get out there. There's nothing's green, everything's still dead.
A lot of tracks in the snow.
Yep, fresh sign.
Tracks in the snow. I mean so you bring out new people into the woods, and you take so many things for granted, just hunting as much as we have. But they'll go in, you have to explain like what a rub is and a scrape is, and they're like, is this a deer trail? And it's like, no, that's not a deer trail, you know? So they're hard. I mean, it is hard to pick out if you don't know what you're looking at.
Yeah.
You go there, you see deer tracks in the snow, nothing beats deer tracks in the snow. Granted, I do think some people get too caught up in certain things because what they're doing in the winter isn't necessarily what they're going to be doing in the summer or the fall or something like that. But nonetheless, you can see how they work through a particular area, and then you can see where they're eating. Like, they go straight food mode in come January and February, right? So that's kind of this deer I just shot a couple days ago. Went there in February. And I was like, oh, they're hitting this hard. There's still acorns on the ground. There's a ton of acorns last year. There's still acorns on the ground. This is going to be a good spot early season next year because they're very much on those food patterns. So that kind of translated over. But at least I knew it was a bedding area. I knew how they work through the area. So
well, that's another thing. You can see beds very easily in the snow.
Yep.
So checking that out after the season. And my uncle, I would say, sorry, Dad, but he's probably the best hunter in our family out of our camp. He just consistently gets deer in Vermont, and he hunts hard. He loves it. And it's different woods there. It's big, pretty big woods. Deer can travel long distances, but he always tells me that go after the season, and that's how I find all my spots. I see the tracks. You can see the trails that are 3 feet wide that they use more often than the other ones, and then I set up on an intersection of 2 of those main trails. That's it.
And you're not messing anyone else's hunt up either. That's the other thing I hate about wanting to go check out a new area, especially even during bow season. Because is there somebody going to be in there and you're going to mess their hunt up, and just don't want to do that. This guy been hunting here for 12 years, and, and it's like, oh.
Yeah.
Speaking of dads, your dad had an awesome hunt.
Yeah,
right before you.
As good
opening day.
As good as my year was last year, it was really for our family. So my dad shot a huge 8-pointer last year too, just a ton of mass, ton of webbing on his antlers, and my brother-in-law shot a huge 10-pointer too. I believe both of the deer dressed over 180. I don't remember the exact numbers, but my dad. So my dad's getting older. He has a hard time getting around.
How old is he?
He is 67, I believe.
He's still young.
Yeah, he's got some medical conditions he's dealing with, so he has a lot harder time getting around. He has taught me everything, really. So he still shoots big. He's shot so many big deer in these past 5 years.
Awesome.
It's unbelievable. He blows our mind every time.
I think hunting is more so. Sorry to interrupt. We always say, people say golf. You get better as you get older. I think hunting is an even better sport for aging than golf is.
For
sure. You can be in your prime when you're 67.
Yep. He's shot more big deer in these past 5 years than he has in most of the rest of his life. It's remarkable, and these are spots that he finds on his own too. And he goes in, and I want to say almost all of them are from the ground too. So this past one, this was opening day. He had scouted an area all by himself. Again, he has a hard time getting around. He needs a cane to get around. Scouted an area all by himself. Went out for a few hours, which I don't even like him going out on his own for a few hours, but he did, and he comes back, and he's like, I found a great area. You got to come check it out, blah, blah, blah. And, I mean, this is a huge piece of woods in New Hampshire, too. And I'm like, yeah, great spot. I mean, it's tough to find a really good spot in the big woods of New Hampshire. So he's like, I'm going to head there opening day. I'm like, yeah, you're right on, And, you kind of just pass it off. I tell him a million times, I found a good spot. It doesn't end up turning out to be that good, So he ends up calling me. I was doing something. I couldn't go out opening day. I was just busy with work. And he calls me at 5:30. And I just always know when he calls me or I call him, you just know when the phones ring, something happened. And he calls me and he's like, hey, I just shot a huge buck. And I'm like, no, you didn't. And he's like, I just shot a huge buck. And I'm like, really? I'm like, you're not messing with me, right? He's like, Dan, I am not messing with you. This deer is probably over 200 pounds. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, all right, I will be there.
And how excited are you when you get that?
This is the best. And I love, again, we're talking, I love seeing other people shoot deer.
And honest to God, cool. You probably felt better when he said that to you than after you got your deer.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. That whole experience was cooler being with him then and everything. And So he ended up going into this spot that he had scouted. He had an idea where there was some like food and there was some like water up above him. It's been drought right now, so it's kind of a good way to target that. He ended up being on the ground, and that deer came in. He watched it for a while. He watched it for like, I want to say a half hour. I mean, this is a big deer, big 8-pointer, ended up dressing 210. Wow. He watched this deer for a half an hour, standing behind a tree with he shoots a crossbow, and the deer ended up coming 15 yards at one point, but he couldn't even put the bow up because it was just like looking right past him. Not necessarily at him, but past him. It turned, started walking away, and then turned back around to look at him. And he was able to bring up the bow at that point. And it was a chest-on shot, which, again, is not a great shot, but with a crossbow, which is very fast, and from the ground nonetheless, if you can make that shot, if you can get it above the brisket, it's a really good shot. He ended up shooting it offhand at 25 yards right in the heart.
That's awesome.
Thing ran a little over 100 yards. He told me, and I was like, go back to the house. I'll meet you at the house. Like, don't go looking around because you're not going to have much of a blood trail for straight on shot like that. No exit hole. So I ended up walking 5 minutes into the woods, and it was already dark. I'm scanning with my headlamp, and something reflects, and like, what was that? I'm looking, I'm like, do you have any tacks out here? He's like, no.
What's that?
And I'm like, what is that, an eyeball? And I'm like, no, it's not an eyeball. He's like, is it my Luminoc? And I'm like, I don't know. What color is it? He goes, orange. I go, stay right here. I start walking up the hill, and I just see tines sticking out. And I was like, no way. So it was so cool because we just come from a big hunting family. Like, my mom helps us package meat and everything like that. My sister hunts. For many years, my sister had shot a bigger buck than any one of us had. She shot a huge 8-pointer up in Maine.
Good for her.
It must have been 7 years ago. And she held that over my head every single year until
I bet.
Yeah, her husband and myself had never shot one bigger than hers until last year.
Yeah,
so, but her, my brother-in-law, me, my mom, and my 2 nieces all came down there to do the gut job, dragging it out, and it was we got
great.
A picture of our whole family.
That's awesome.
It's funny. One of my buddies said, I sent them the picture, and he goes, "A deer so big you can put 3 generations behind it."
Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool.
So I'm just so proud of him. He is my role model.
That's
if I could
awesome.
shoot half the big bucks he's shot, I'll send you some pictures after this. You should see some of these deer.
Yeah, please do.
That's
I
awesome.
love looking at deer pictures. And at 67, and as long as he stays healthy, he's got 20 more years.
Yeah.
My grandfather gave up at 90 out at our deer camp. He just had a little chair out behind camp, not too far, but
that's crazy.
It's something that doesn't leave you once it gets in you.
No, he can't. Oh man, he cannot not hunt. It's like it's just in his blood. He loves.
That's
doing
gonna
it.
kill him when he can't.
That'll be a good way to go, though.
One of the reasons I started filming, number one, was because my dad couldn't really go out anymore. He was older, in his 80s, and when we would go up to the camp in Vermont and stuff, he'd just still come with us, and he'd hang out and love to hear, all the guys come back. And so, I started with turkey hunting, and I just go out and film it, and because I come back with all these stories, and so I started to film it and bring it back, and we watch it, and he loved all that. So I'm like, all right, I'll start doing this with deer hunting. What the heck, and I can let him watch them. And so
that's cool.
Got to share it with people.
Yep.
Yeah.
And a couple things for the new hunters listening that are good lessons from what Dan was talking about is your shot placement. Like, Dan has been shooting. He's an exceptional shot with the bow. He has the utmost confidence in his shot. So you can take, and it's your choice. Everything is your choice, but you can take the riskier shot if you feel confident in your shot and your setup and everything. But if you're a new hunter, don't watch that video and think I'm going to take that. It's up to you, but don't think you're going to make that shot your first year hunting.
I completely agree with that. And that's why I wanted to kind of address that too. A lot, just because I know my arrow setup and what it's going to do. And I've had experiences shooting deer, and I know what it's going to do in particular situations. But yeah, don't be afraid to pass on a shot. Man, I'd have a lot more deer on the wall if there were some. I've missed a few deer on shots that I shouldn't have taken either. I just rushed it. there's so many times where you think that this is going to be your only opportunity, but realistically, you're probably going to get another one. Like that deer, you might think that you're pegged. I mean, this weekend, you saw the video. I'm pretty sure I was pegged. He was stomping his foot looking at me. But I don't rush my shot.
How weird is it that he pegged you that day and he didn't?
I know.
Your bow exploded and he came closer.
Yeah. It's just weird. Wind. He just heard a sound. He didn't know anything. I feel like you can get away with a lot, but once a deer smells you, that's when the gig is up. But yeah, just be careful about your shot placement. Do not hesitate to not shoot. I've never regretted a shot that I didn't take because, man, they've been very fortunate. I've only lost a couple deer ever. But man, that just really, really bugs me when it's a shot that you shouldn't have taken and you do, and you got to live with that for a long time. And I care so much about these animals. Like I will literally not sleep. It just drives at me. So
I mean, you have to, I think we were talking about before that even when you get a deer perfectly broadside, anything can happen that you can mess that shot up. So when you start messing with tough angles and bad, you're just, the window shrinks to almost nothing.
Yeah.
Even if you're a good shot sometimes, I mean.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot, a little branch you can't see or something like that, or just even the deer turns. So even on that shot that I made, if you look at the video, I thought I hit him a little bit low. I used my 20-yard pin. I knew he was alert. So this is another thing. As a newer hunter, you just kind of think about this, but deer do, it's called ducking the string. They don't actually duck beneath your arrow. They just load up when they're ready to bound. And we have so many videos of deer getting hit high that we've looked at, that we broke down frame by frame, where they'll drop really far. And he actually dropped into my shot. I hit that deer probably about right in the middle, but I had used my 20-yard pin pretty much in the middle, knowing it was going to hit low. So on a deer that's alert, I will shoot a little bit low. And if it's like 30 to 40 yards, I'll probably aim a little bit low so that a little room for error there too.
Yeah, once you get past 20 yards and they're on alert. Yeah, same thing.
That's really good advice. Yeah, I never thought about that.
Yep. I mean, you could put your pin right on a deer at 35 yards, and that arrow goes exactly where you wanted it to, and it's going to go right over his back. I mean, it can happen at times. Won't always, but it's just another thing to think about. One thing I wanted to say, I was listening to Jake's podcast earlier too there. I think it's important for newer people to not get hung up on shooting big deer and everything. I think it's so important to get just a lot of experience shooting deer.
Yeah.
Shoot does,
shoot
spike horns, shoot whatever. Like the more arrows you can put through deer and build and put yourself in that situation, when the time comes to shoot a big one, you're going to be so much better off. You won't get super rattled and make all those mistakes. Just shoot a lot of deer. That's what you should be doing when you're first getting into it.
But I think social media really makes that difficult.
Yeah.
How many times do you see a post where someone says, it's let's say a little basket rack, 6-pointer or something. They say, well, it's meat in the freezer, or they say, oh, it's not a big one, but I'm proud of them. It's like they have to right up front, almost like defend themselves with whoever's going to see this post that, hey, I understand it's not a monster buck, but and it's all the social media competition, and it stinks. But you're right. It's like, you should shoot as a beginner, even if you don't want the meat, because you're going to learn so much.
Yeah.
Whether it's tracking the deer, whether it's how the deer reacted, where the deer went, all of that. You're going to learn so much by just getting deer on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, I shot a button buck and a 5-pointer last year, and I was happier than hell with those deer, and I was so proud, and it felt as good as any deer that I've ever killed, and they were my first 2 bow deer. Like if you're new to it, trust me, you're gonna be excited with your first deer. It doesn't matter what it is.
My first year with a bow was a 3-pointer. I'm not sure I've ever been more excited in my life than when I shot that deer. It was just so cool.
I was telling the story about the first deer I shot, but I didn't tell him this part. I don't think I did, but my cousin was with me, and I had shot the doe, and it was dead, and I had to shoot it like 3 times because I ended up spine shooting it first. And it was still almost dark, and I'm running through the woods to where my cousin is, and I'm yelling, and little did I know he has deer all around the stand, and I'm like, Jeff, I'm yelling to the woods, Jeff, I got a deer, I got one. 7 years, I finally got a deer. And he's like, what would you like? I have deer all around my tree stand.
It feels so good after 7 years, huh?
God.
Oh, it really does. But yeah, just shoot whatever you want to shoot.
And first, just focus on seeing some deer. Like,
Yeah.
Get it out, get in the mix, and see some deer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, there's so much to learn just being in the stand. It's crazy.
That's why we do it.
Awesome. Well, let's wrap it up. I mean, I really appreciate you coming down, Dan. That was
Cool.
awesome.
Yeah, thanks
Kevin,
for having me.
thanks
This
for
was a
coming
great
up
time.
again.
It was fun.
It's cool to meet Kevin too. Like I said, I
same
watched
here.
your videos. We've talked about you.
Kevin's
Me and my
got a big
brother-in-law
fan
so many
club.
times.
My wife jokes about that. It's so weird because I'll run into people in woods. One of the guys I hunt with, it's just a funny story. The friend of mine that I hunt with now, I was checking out the piece of property across from where I was hunting, and I ran into him, and I ended up being on his family's land, but it wasn't posted. And he's immediately comes down on an ATV, and I'm thinking, oh man, here we go. We're gonna have a big argument, big fight. Here we go. And I had a stand with me and everything. And he starts to talk. Hey, videos on YouTube, and he's like, boom, and now we're friends. Now we're hunting partners.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's funny.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Hunt Suburbia. If you guys enjoy this podcast, please share it with friends. Link to it, on your social medias, and leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple iTunes or Apple Podcast app, anywhere that you're listening and streaming where you're able to leave a review. That is super helpful to us. And we really hope that you're enjoying the podcast, and we're looking forward to putting this out every single week. We'll see you every Sunday. Thanks again. Big bucks I've been dreaming often, every night till I'm in a coffin. Vermont woods to the burbs of Boston, I'm looking for a tree to get lost in. Crisp mornings, little dust in the snow, quality time, just me and my bow. Fall evenings, I know just where to go for some quality times for me and my bow. It's just me and my